today. As she mentioned, my name is Kat Harrison. I am currently the Internship Development Officer in our Richmond Northwestern Mutual office. So I work pretty closely with JMU in terms of internship recruiting, full-time recruiting, and also just trying to be a resource to your students. We've had some awesome JMU Dukes in our internship program. So the more I can meet, the merrier. So excited to chat with you all today about a pretty important topic, which is life after graduation, which I know can be pretty intimidating just in general, but especially in today's environment with COVID, life after graduation looks really different. So what we'll kind of talk through today is a couple things, starting at where do I begin? What can I be doing now prior to graduation to kind of prepare myself for life after graduation, as well as how do I adjust my mindset from being a college student to being a professional in the real world, as they call it. And then it's so important to stay healthy, both with your mental health and your physical health. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then, of course, the big piece is all of that responsibility that you take on once you do graduate. Personal responsibility, professional responsibility, but a lot of financial responsibility as well. And if you don't have parents who will happily pay for you to live under their roof for the rest of your life, you should probably start worrying about some of those things and figuring out how to create a budget and kind of manage your finances, manage your money. So we'll talk through some of those things as well. But like Laura said, feel free to unmute yourselves if you've got questions. You can also throw questions in the chat. We can definitely address any of those questions at the end as well, but we'll go ahead and get started. So the first topic, where do I begin? In other words, what can I be doing right now to prepare myself if I'm nearing graduation? And you can never start too soon. So even if you're a sophomore or a junior, these are some things that you can be doing today to set yourself up for success when that graduation date does come. So the first thing is, if you are one of those college students who says, I still don't know what I want to do when I graduate, that's okay. And you're not alone. I can promise you that. Most students either have an idea of what they want to do and then find that maybe it's not what they end up doing for the rest of their lives, or vice versa. So don't feel like you have to have that set 20-year plan. Be flexible with yourself, but first and foremost, figure out what you're passionate about and take away the industries or the career opportunities and just decide, what am I passionate about in my personal or my professional life? So for me, my degree is in biology and psychology, so not related to business or finance, but I have a huge passion for helping people and making an impact. So I get my fulfillment in my role by being able to impact college students or full-time advisors who join this career and ultimately change their lives. So sometimes it just starts by doing your research, finding some of those companies that share the same values or morals that you do. And then also utilize your network, especially while you're still at school. You have all of these free resources that you will not have in the real world. So career services, allow them to help you with your resume or cover letters or mock interviews, things like that. Or ask for advice or ask to get connected to alumni. You can also utilize your professors, your academic advisors, your mentors, even your family. If your uncle is a financial advisor and you've never taken a finance class, but you think you might be really interested in that career, call him and ask to pick his brain for a couple minutes, or ask if you can shadow his office for a day. You never really know what you like doing until you're doing it. So take on some of those opportunities like internships, part-time jobs, or join a new club or organization. Some of the things that I did in college, I'm so grateful for looking back, because those are connections that will be lifelong. And those are people who you never know could open up the door to a new opportunity. So stay in contact with your network, but also build your network outside of where it's at right now. And the other piece of that is making sure that you're at least starting or monitoring your personal brand, which today, of course, is our social media and our online platforms. Because we're not able to go to networking events or in-person career fairs or really many in-person things at all, we really need to make sure that we're sharpening our LinkedIn profiles, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all those things that maybe you haven't looked at in a couple months or a couple years even. Go back and clean up some of those profiles or update them to be accurate. If your Facebook still says you're in high school, update it to say that you're in college and share what you're studying. If you're seeking a job opportunity or an internship, put that in your LinkedIn bio and let those recruiters or professionals know that you're seeking out those opportunities, or else they won't be able to reach out to you and have some of those conversations. And the other piece to this is really making sure that you're practicing those skills that you've kind of perfected over time, both in high school and now in college. So those interview skills, your communication skills, you can almost guarantee that the first question of the majority of your interviews will be, tell me about yourself, or tell me about your background. It's the famous first question, but that is basically your first impression. So even if you already know the recruiter or the professional, that is your second first impression, because that's your opportunity to share who you are, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what your skill set is, and why you're interested in this industry or this opportunity. So the more you can practice that elevator pitch or that story, the better you'll feel and the more confident you'll be when you're sharing that story in those interviews. So whether it's with career services or professors or maybe just your roommate, ask them to do a mock interview with you. Ask them to grill you with some of those hard questions. And even though they're uncomfortable, they're going a little bit out of our comfort zone, you're going to feel 10 times better when you answer that question in an interview if you've already practiced it with a friend or a professional in the career services. And the other thing that you can be doing right now is go ahead and start creating that plan or even that budget. What are your expenses going to look like following graduation? Are you going to live at home? Are you going to try to find an apartment? Are you going to live by yourself? Will you have roommates? Those things will change your financial future in a huge way. So start kind of brainstorming those things, even if you aren't graduating until May. Those things are going to come very, very fast. And the next thing I want to mention is your mindset. And to me, mindset is everything, both in your personal life and your professional life. So the more you can start learning about how to better your mindset or how to create that positive self-talk, the more confident you're going to feel going into that real world experience or that job opportunity that you're starting after graduation. And unfortunately, like it says on the slide, college doesn't last forever, right? And you never really understand what people say when they say, it's the best 4 years of your life, but it'll go by like that. But it's so true. By the time you get to May 21, you feel like you were just a freshman 10 minutes ago. So it's crazy how fast everything goes. But it's not going to change the fact that college will not last forever. So we can't change the inevitable. We just have to kind of switch our mindset and stop thinking about college as a break from the real life or your real world, but start thinking about it as this stage of real life. So this transition and this new opportunity for you. So if you have, a lot of these expectations that you'll have free time, you'll have a lot of time with your friends or a lot of time to go to the gym, work on your fitness. Think about those things and how they're going to change when you go into a job or a 9 to 5 or any opportunity after graduation. You really just want to change your expectations so that your mindset is changing with that. So set new goals, set new professional objectives as well. And also, don't be afraid to ask for advice. There are people who would love to have a conversation with you, would love to tell you all about what they do. People love talking about themselves. So it never hurts to send a LinkedIn message or send an email, give a phone call to someone that you either want to be introduced to or you just want to learn more about what they do. Maybe 5 years later, that person could be your first phone call and your new job opportunity. You just never know where those connections could take you. So always be open to going out of your comfort zone and asking for that help, asking for that advice. And this is a huge, huge piece. Don't expect to have it all figured out because I think a lot of times when we are in college, we think to ourselves that we have to know exactly what the next step is, what it looks like, when it's happening, what happens after that. But really, we need to just sit down and look at ourselves and say, we can be a little bit flexible. What I love doing today might not be what I love doing in 5 years from now. And that's okay because all of the experience and the connections that you're making along the way are going to assist you when you go into that dream job or that additional job opportunity after your first role. A lot of times people have 10 or 11 different careers before they really stick with that one career and retire. So don't feel like you have to have everything figured out. Obviously, create a plan, have that system in place, but be flexible and be patient with yourself. We're all in this unprecedented time where we don't really know when things are going back to normal. So don't be afraid to try new things and go for new opportunities as well. And this is a huge, huge, huge piece. And I can't stress this enough because not only are you graduating, but you're graduating in the middle of a global pandemic, which is so challenging. And you should first and foremost give yourself a huge pat on the back for just making it through this year and be extremely proud of, what you've accomplished and what you're going to accomplish in the future. And one of the things that you don't think about or you don't get a chance to think about quite as much when you don't have as much free time is your health, both your personal, your physical health, and also your mental health. Both are equally as important, in my opinion, because if one falls, the other falls right with it. And so, as you're going into this new real world environment or this new work environment, you really want to be mindful and almost expect some of these things like bills, student loans, a new home, rent. Some of those things are going to be maybe bills that you've never paid before, but you know to expect them so you can prepare yourself mentally and also prepare yourself financially for some of those things that are coming in the near future. And this is a really challenging time when people go from living with their best friends to going back home and living with their parents. It can be really, really difficult. And you might not have the financial feasibility in your first couple months to go out and find a house or an apartment. So you might have to live with mom and dad for a little bit. And that in and of itself is a huge transition. You've had all of this freedom and this free time over the last 4 years. And now you're going back to your home life and that structure. So make sure you're setting those boundaries, not only with yourself, but also with your family or your roommates, whoever your new living environment will consist of. Those things are really important to be mindful of, especially if you've had like the same roommate all 4 years. My roommate and I were best friends. We lived together every year. So I knew it was going to be really hard when we graduated and kind of parted ways. But that's when we just made a plan to see each other at least once a month or go on a trip every other month. And so you kind of have to create that new environment for yourself to keep you mentally stable and positive as well. And also keep in mind your free time in college is not going to be your free time in your professional environment or the job that you go into, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working for a company, small or large. your free time is substantial in college, and you really don't have a lot of those opportunities to go run between classes to do laundry, or make dinner with your roommates, or go to a sporting event in the middle of the day. Those are things that we often take advantage of when we're in college, but they will come to a halt very quickly, unfortunately. So, the more you can understand that you have to prioritize those tasks and those habits, the more you can start getting into that new routine of, I know I need to actually plan to do my laundry today because I'm not going to get home until 5 or 6 p.m. So, just having that scheduled focus time is really, really crucial sometimes. And it's also important to know that a lot of times in college, you might have one class, you might have 2 hours in between your next class, but in a work environment, you're typically working 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, and you're in the same space or office environment all day, which can be a lot for a college student who's used to going to class and then breakfast and then the gym, taking a nap, going to their next class. Those are things that you almost want to prepare yourself for mentally so that you don't get shocked by this 8 hour or 9 hour workday, and you really get adjusted again to that new routine. And summer vacation is no longer, unless maybe you're going to be a teacher. But a lot of times, that first summer break after graduation hits hard because a lot of your friends are still in school, they're going home, they're really excited for summer, and you're working every day. So make sure you're planning time for yourself or time for you and your friends to take a trip or go on vacation, get you out of that work mode so that you can at least, enjoy the summer and have some of those experiences that you would have had in college as well. So when it comes to your physical health, you want to try to, if you can't join a gym, maybe start running or start doing yoga or start meditating. Do something every week to at least get 30 minutes of active activity every day or at least every other day, because exercise is so crucial to our mental health, but it also affects our physical health as well, which in turn affects our mental health. So the more we can help both sides of that, the better we will feel on a day in and day out experience. But it's also really great to try a new class. Like, we have a couple students who they started going to Orange Theory, and that was something that they'd never done before, but it was something new and exciting that they could do with their peers. So just make sure to schedule that time to stay active. Call a friend or call a family member if you're having a bad day. Take that time to tell yourself, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling overworked, and I need that mental health check in. Because if you let it go on and on and on, you're going to eventually reach burnout, and you're going to get extremely overwhelmed, and you're going to want to walk out of the front door and just quit your job because you're so overwhelmed. But if you had communicated maybe with a mentor or a leader, and kind of eased some of that anxiety or frustration, you might be completely better off after some of those conversations. So keep those things in mind, and also make sure you're eating a healthy diet and getting a lot of sleep. So in college, we're not getting a lot of sleep typically, but when you're in the professional world, sleep is one of the most crucial things because it's going to affect how you act on a day-to-day basis. So if you've got 5 client meetings and you've only slept for 2 hours, you might have that brain fog. You might be irritable. You might be exhausted. So make sure, if you don't want to schedule a bedtime, that's okay, but maybe try to start waking up a little bit earlier every single day, going to bed a little bit earlier every night, and you'll really start to feel those benefits in your body and outside of your body and your mental health as well. And also, don't forget the work-life balance is really important. So don't stay, at work until 10 p.m. every night. I know you're probably super hardworking. You want to get all of those things done, but again, you're going to reach that burnout phase. You're going to get overwhelmed if you don't take those breaks and kind of have those mental or physical check-ins with you or with someone else. So staying healthy is really, really important. And I want to pause and see if anybody has questions so far. If you do, feel free to throw them in the chat. But as we're going through, one thing that we always talk about is all of these debts or financial experiences that maybe we didn't expect or we weren't prepared for. And once you graduate, some of those things start immediately after graduation. So if you have a lot of student loan debt, your student loans could be beginning to be paid the first month after you graduate. So you might not know what that payment's going to look like or how much is going to come out every month, but you definitely should start thinking about that and creating, an emergency savings plan if you need to, or setting aside some money to make sure you have money in place to reach those goals for your student loan debt. The other thing that a lot of college students have is credit card debt. And credit cards can be a good and a bad thing, probably more of a bad thing typically, but they can be good for building your credit. But that's only if you use it productively and pay it off consistently. If you're missing payments or you're not able to make those payments on time, that's really going to affect your credit and your credit score, which then is going to affect you if you ever need to take out a personal loan or you want to buy a car or a house. Those are things that maybe you don't want to do it in the next 6 months, but it could take a year to 2 years to fix some of that credit history. So make sure you're consistently paying those payments on time and also trying to not spend quite as much and really save some of that money for an emergency savings plan. And the other piece to that is you have a lot of expenses that you would not have had in college because you lived in a dorm maybe, or you were using the dining hall for most of your meals. You don't think about, $100 every 2 weeks at Kroger or the grocery store. But those are things that you'll have to start thinking about once you go into this real world environment. So you might not have had to pay an apartment or a house rent before, and maybe you're living on your own. That can be really expensive as well. You have car payments or your car insurance. A lot of parents say, okay, you're on your own now. We're going to give you your phone bill, your car insurance. And some of those things really add up very quickly. So you could say, oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to make X amount of money next year. But once you really break down your expenses and you start budgeting, you quickly realize that $60,000 or $70,000 isn't what we think it was in college. So keep those things in mind as you're preparing for some of these additional expenses. And also, your health insurance and your dental insurance are things that you've probably relied on your parents for. But at the age of 26, you're no longer able to be on your parents' health insurance. So it might be when you start your first job, or it might be when you're 26 or 27, you're going to have to start adding in those additional payments every month and taking those into consideration when you are planning your budget. And then gas, groceries, entertainment, utilities, cable, all of those things are things that our parents have typically paid for in the past, or the university had paid for with your cable. You just plug your TV in and you've got your Wi-Fi set up, everything's great. But in the real world, you are the one that is setting those things up, and you're also the one that's paying for those things. So as you're creating a budget, make sure you're learning how to manage your money and manage your finances. And a lot of times we can utilize our parents or our older siblings or our mentors when we're, starting off in this new environment, this new transition, because we don't know. They don't really teach us, unless you're a finance major, they don't teach us too much about personal finance in the real world or even in school. So try to do as much research as you possibly can personally, but also don't be afraid to ask for help, and ask for help from people who have had a long time to build their financial future and build and really achieve their financial security. Because you don't want to ask advice from someone who's been out of college for 2 weeks, because they're probably in the same boat as you. But the first thing to do when it comes to managing your finances is really just identify your goals. And obviously, you're going to have some long term goals, your retirement goals, but also focus on some of those short term goals. If you know you want to buy a house within 5 years, make sure you're writing that down and accounting for that when you're saving every month. Have maybe an additional $100 every month go towards that down payment on a house. Make sure you're identifying your goals first, and then also recording what is your income, but also what's your actual income. So, what is your take home pay every month? What are your bonuses? Do you have any additional compensation that you can achieve or earn? And how does that fit into your current expenses? So, your expenses, when you think about those, you're not only thinking about your rent, your utilities, or your phone bill, but you're also thinking about going and spending time with your friends, traveling, or maybe you're also thinking about your pet. Like, my pet is very expensive, and I didn't realize that until I was on my own. But going to the vet, paying for the medications, paying for the food, those are things that you want to keep in mind, but also some of the smaller things like your subscriptions. Even though Spotify and Netflix might only be $10, $12 a month, if you've got 5 or 6 different subscriptions, that's $50, $60 that's coming out of your account every month that you should probably know about. So, what I do when I am tracking my expenses or making a budget, I usually go onto Excel and I will put in all of my expenses, all of my subscriptions, so that as they change, it's as simple as me changing the price, and then the formulas all stay consistent. So that's a super easy way to track your income, track your expenses, and see what you have left over to save or take home. And then you also want to consider, what are your wants, but what are your needs? So, being that you're 21, 22 years old and you're starting your first job or your first career opportunity, this might be the first time that you have quite a bit of money coming through, and you might want to let it burn a hole in your pocket, right? You might want to go spend that money, or you might think you have a lot more money than you actually do in reality. So it's important to know, do I really need to be ordering Uber Eats 3 days out of the week? Or can I make sure to cook at home and save money those 3 days out of the week? Sometimes we think that our wants are needs, when really they're just things that we desire. But your needs are your living expenses, those things that you cannot physically live without, and that are going to help you stay alive and stay successful. So try not to eat out as much, try not to spend too much of that money. And a quick tip that I always like to use is, when you get your paycheck, send a whole bunch of it to your savings account. And that way, visually, you see, oh my goodness, I have $300 in my checking account, I'm broke. But you have X amount of money in your savings account. So you have that cushion there, but it allows you to not spend the money that you probably already shouldn't be spending. And then once you develop that plan, maintain that plan over time. So for me, I typically look at my budget at least once every 6 months. So my subscriptions are changing, what I'm paying for is changing. Your rent's going to change every year probably when you renew, but also your salary is going to change. Your income potential could be higher. So as those things change, make sure you're adjusting those things in your budget so that it's reflecting the most accurate updates in your financial future. And just real quick here, wanted to put a couple budget resources. There are a lot of free budget resources, whether they're websites. I know Northwestern has a lot of articles out, but there's also a lot of apps that you can use as well. So for me, I believe I use Mint, but it goes in and my accounts are connected. It tells me, how much credit card debt I have, how much I have left on my student loans or my auto loans, but it also tells me where I'm spending my money every month. So I always know when I get that notification that says, hey, Kat, you spent $100 more on food last week than you did the week before. That's my check to say, okay, did I need to do that? Or did I probably need to save that extra $100 last week? So don't be afraid to utilize those free resources. But like I said before, you can also create an Excel spreadsheet, or you can talk to an advisor or talk to your family. As long as you're putting your goals and your hopes and dreams onto paper and tracking that, you're going to be set up for success for when you do graduate, and those kind of expenses and things won't hit you like a wall. So keep that in mind as you kind of begin to build that budget and continue maintaining that over time. So that's all I have got for today. So I did leave my contact information here, my email, my phone number. If you have any questions, or you just want to network, or you want someone to look over your resume, I am happy to help, happy to be a resource. We also have over 350 offices in the US with Northwestern Mutual. So if you're looking for internships or full-time opportunities, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll be happy to connect you to whichever office is closest to home for you. But thank you so much just for having me today and for learning a little bit more about life after graduation. And I hope you were able to take away some good tips.
My name is Amber Lawrence, so I'm the Campus Relations Manager at the Select Group. I will give you a little visual here. So the Select Group, we were founded in 1999 by Sheldon Walitsky, who you see on this slide here. So we started a little over 20 years ago with one single office here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, to now we have a national footprint, as you can see on this slide. We've grown to over $179 million in revenue. But as you can see, right, we've definitely faced a lot of adversity, as you can see on this timeline, throughout the years, right? It wasn't just instant wins, instant success. We had to consistently overcome a lot of challenges to continue to grow and make sure that we are positioning ourselves where we can best serve our clients. As a technical services firm, what we do is we provide IT and technology clients with different talent and resources to help them grow their business. So we take more of a consultative approach to understand, okay, what are their technology initiatives? What projects do they have coming down the line? Do they need any professional services or managed solutions? All of these are different things that we can offer to them, but essentially helping provide them with top talent in the IT and technical space that's going to help them hit those deliverables or get to that project finish line. We're going to be able to help provide them with the right people in those seats. So we service a various different amount of verticals. So communications, financial, technology through and through, government and federal, utilities. We have teams that are specialized to each of these industries to best serve our clients. But in addition to how we are supporting our clients and always growing and morphing to where we make sure that we are able to position ourselves the best and support there, we also try to do the same for employees. So this idea of, living your best life personally and professionally, I did not come up with it. I can't take credit. Our founder, Sheldon, he is huge on developing people both in business and life, and a true believer that if people are developing personally, if they show up for themselves personally, they will then show up better professionally. So this is something that I was introduced to and have continuously been taught new practices and ways of doing this at my time through the Select Group. So talking a little bit about living your best life before we get to this, I'm curious to hear from either of you here. What does living your best life mean to you?
For me, living your best life is just the path that you've always wanted to be on. You know, your work isn't work to you, it's fun, it's what you've wanted to do. Living your best life, like when you want to take a break, you can, you know, like you're not always living paycheck to paycheck or just having to always find something to do.
Mhm. Love that.
Yeah, I would agree with what Lauren said too. You want to just have time to take a break if you want to. Being not like um, working like 80 hours a week. You know, getting a break, having some kind of balance. I think is really important. And I think you should like your job, and you should find that job fulfilling. But I think it's also good to have separation and have a life outside of work too.
Yes, definitely. I think both of you are right on the money there. And, living your best life could mean something totally different to other people. And there's no right or wrong there, right? It's definitely a very personal question. But this idea and this conversation around balance, we see continuously coming up when we talk about this, work-life balance. What does that even mean? Especially in a time where we have gone from, working at home to living at work. Right now, everything is just here all the time. We're in our homes, or we are still here at the Select Group, at least, right? I know some people are starting to go back into the office and whatnot, but when you have your work in your, home comfort space, what a difference that makes, right? How do you create boundaries for yourself to be able to walk away, to be able to say, hey, I need to turn this off, even though it's right here, even though emails come to my phone, even though, I see all these things popping up. How am I making time and being intentional with my time to make sure that I'm creating that balance and those boundaries for me so I can be the best me personally, and then tomorrow I'll show up even better professionally, right? So that brings me to this idea of living on autopilot. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys. You're in the car, driving to work, right? This is when I think of it. You get there and you're like, I don't even remember, did I stop at the stop sign? Did that even happen? I don't know. It's these different kind of automatic, you're not even thinking about it. It just happens, right? You're making these decisions, and there's a lot of research on why we do this. And it's important, right? Sometimes your brain overload, you do some of these things that you are familiar with, that you know how to do on autopilot to give yourself a break, which you need. But there's also potentially an opportunity to look at how often are we going on autopilot? And is that because we're now in this predictable daily routine? We're not feeling the joy and the fire that we need to be. Maybe we can be a little bit more intentional throughout the day. Or is this this is a moment I need? So that's kind of where you want to start thinking, right? How many times do I feel like I'm making these unconscious decisions, that I'm doing things without thinking, that I kind of feel like I'm floating through the day, right? You kind of feel like you're just going through the motions. You're not really seeing a lot of that excitement and that intentional thinking there. And if you have felt this before, I know I have, survey, I did this a little while ago, I'm sure that it's probably even higher now if they redid the study, but it was a survey of about 3,000 people, and it showed that 96% of them admitted to living on autopilot. So you're not alone, right? It's this default operating mode that we go on. But something to think about, right, is the opposite of that. If we want to be purposeful and intentional with the way that we live, we've got to get off this autopilot. Autopilot is not intentional, right? So I love this one. I love Beyonce. So you have the same amount of hours in a day as Beyonce. And it's true, right? Time is one of those non-renewable resources. We don't get it back. Everybody has the same amount of time in a day. You get to choose what you do with it, right? And so if we think like a week, and I have these numbers written down, let me look at them so I don't lie to you. So, okay, 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week. So if we take out a time that we say, okay, I'm sleeping, this is for work, or this is for school, this is extracurriculars, right? Take out all the things that we're obligated time towards. That leaves you with about 72 hours a week. Okay, so that sounds like a lot, but when you really think about it, okay, I have 72 hours in a 7-day period to do what I want with it. Am I using that in a way that serves me? Because I can go quick, right? If you think about how many times you've just been, hey, it's end of the day. I'll speak for myself. End of the day. I'm going to, turn on some Netflix, unwind. I could spend like 2-3 hours binging a new show, and that's out of my 72, right? I don't get that back. It's gone. So how do we get intentional and make sure that we're spending these 72 hours in a way that serves us? Because we don't get time back, right? That's the one thing that we always only have this one amount of, you can never get it back. So this is a way that I like to check in with myself, and I can send you guys this as an attachment. You can print it off at home, do it yourself, whenever you'd like. You can reuse it however you want. But this is a really good way to check in with yourself. So the personal scorecard, what you do is each of these boxes here that you see, you fill in the boxes with how you spend your time. So maybe that's cooking, really like cooking, that's a hobby of mine. Maybe it's working out, hanging out with my friends, playing guitar, maybe it's studying or work, right? Depending on where you're at in life, these tend to change. They tend to fluctuate depending on what's important to you at that time. But you fill this out with how you spend your time, and then you actually go and rank the priority of how you're spending your time and how important it is to you. So in that bottom little circle there, you would rank from 1 to 12, number 1 being your highest priority, 12 being the least priority. You rank them. All of these things, what is most important to me? Again, there's no right or wrong answers. This is a you thing. You don't have to show anybody. You don't have to tell anybody, right? This is an opportunity to get really honest with yourself. So rank those out. And then you want to grade yourself. So in the top left, that's where you spend your time. How are you showing up here? So 1 is like, okay, I am like totally struggling here. I'm not showing up here the way that I need to be. Whereas 10 is you're a master. You are spending exactly the amount of time that you need to be spending in this area. You are crushing it. So then you fill all this out, you really spend time, right? Look yourself in the mirror, have that hard conversation like, okay, I say this is important to me, but is it, right? Am I spending my time there? And I won't make you guys go through this with me right now. If we were in person, we'd probably all take a couple minutes and do it together because that's fun. But I can definitely give this to do on your own time if you'd like, because you might find, like I did, that it is a huge reality check. I was saying things were, number 1, number 2 priority in my life, but I was spending the least amount of time doing them. I was spending a lot of time and energy in areas that maybe weren't quite as high of a priority to me. And it really just showed me, okay, if I am saying this is important, for example, if I'm saying spending time with my family is number 1 priority to me, it is the most important thing to me, but yet I'm not doing anything about it, I need to look again at myself and be like, hey, well, 1, is this as important as I'm saying it is? And if it is, what do I need to do to better show up here? How can I make sure I'm being intentional with my time to be true to myself and, my values and what I find important and show up for myself there, right? How do I make that happen? So definitely a reality check. I think this is a really cool thing to do throughout the seasons of your life. Seeing, okay, maybe things right now that are super priority to me, a couple months from now might not be. Maybe other things come into play. Life happens, right? Life's, and you have to change those different priorities and what you're focusing your energy on. So it's a good thing to do every now and then when you're feeling like, hey, maybe I need to rethink how I'm spending my days. I'm feeling in a rut, or I'm feeling like I'm going through the motions right now, not feeling as fulfilled as I know that I can and have in the past. Maybe let's check in. Let's see where we're at. And then I don't know if I have it on here, but I have a future scorecard too that I can send to you. Basically what you do with that is you look at your personal scorecard of where you were at and you think, okay, wow, reality check, right? So where do I want to be? What do I wish this said? What do I wish was true about what I wrote here? And then you can put that as like a goal, right? This is what I want to get to. I'm not there yet, but put pen to paper. This is where I'm going to start putting more effort, putting more time. What's real is written, right? You'll probably hear me say that a couple times. It's a big thing here at the Select Group. We write everything down. If we have a goal, we write it down, we tell our neighbor, right? If you tell other people, you loop people in, you put it out there for the world to see, you're more likely to show up for yourself in that area. Because then it's not just you that you're accountable to, right? It's the person next to you, and we feel more responsible to them. So put it out there, right? Make that commitment to yourself. But there is something that we can do too, that this idea of dead space. Have you guys ever heard, or what was your thought of dead space? Like what that could mean? I'm not sure if this is a widely known term. This is just the research I did.
Is that just like time that you are doing unproductive things, I guess? Like you're randomly scrolling on social media or something, or?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So it's these times, and I like to think of it in these moments when like we might be on autopilot, right? Driving to school or work, when we're getting ready for the day, before you go to bed, between classes, like a lot of the times where I know I find myself, right? Okay, like before bed, maybe I'm scrolling, what did I miss today, right? Or catching up on a movie or a show, drive to school or work, maybe I'm like jamming out, having a little one-person dance party, who knows, right? But there could be a good use of this time to do something else, right? So how can we make this intentional time? And again, not to say some days you just need that personal dance party. That is what's going to be intentional about your day, because that's going to make you feel better and more energetic. Totally get it. I do that all the time. But we can do other things in these areas too that really allow us to multitask, do these things where we usually would probably just turn our brain off, just go through the motions, but make it productive. Make it something that we can be either learning something or getting something done, right? So what are some things that you guys do in any of these moments? What are some tips of maybe how we could use that, or what are your thoughts?
Usually like when I'm driving, or like even when I'm just like working out, instead of like listening to music, sometimes listen to podcasts like related to some of my classes, just to, get a little bit ahead, like know the information before my teacher actually teaches it. Or like when I'm getting ready for the day, sometimes I have like my notes next to me and I just look at them like once in a while, just flickering through.
I love that. It's great use of time, for sure.
That is so impressive, Lauren. That's great.
I know. I'm like, look at her.
I'm really interested
yeah.
in the topic. So like it's not like work to me. I love reading about like the judiciary stuff and just like law in general. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
Lauren,
That's how you know you're in the right field, if you find that interesting, like outside of assigned reading. So that's great.
right? Lauren's already living her best life. I think we're going to give it to her now to teach us. But yes, no, I love that. Podcasts are such a great thing to, tune into. I do that now too. When I work out, I listen to podcasts. Sometimes I'll be honest, I love my true crime and my entertainment podcasts too, right? So I still make time for that. We have to have entertainment too, but I'll also try to do, personal development or something that does, tribute to my profession and how I can grow and learn. So that's a great way to do it, podcasts. Another thing that I like to do, and this does sound silly, so some people might laugh and be like, that's weird, I'm not doing that. And that's okay. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. But when I get ready for the day, I find that to be a really good time to do self-affirmation or give myself positive affirmations. So for me, growing throughout my professional career, personally, confidence was a big thing. Graduating school, going into the professional world, I felt like that confidence that I'd always thought I had was lacking. And I was like, what's going on here, right? Like, why am I not feeling as confident in this new space? But that's what it is, right? You're learning, you're trying to get, your feet on the ground, you're in a new environment. You just went from, I was, top of my class here, all the big guy on campus, to, okay, now I'm the new person, right? I don't know everything that everybody else knows. So self-affirmation for me was really good. It got me back in that sense of confidence within myself, telling myself one thing that I was proud of doing the day before. Such a good way to focus on those things too, right? We are so quick to be mean to ourselves. I don't know about you guys, but like this thing's on all day, right? I am meaner to me than I would ever be to anybody else that I saw or came in contact with. So taking time at the beginning of the day to tell myself something either I like about myself, something I'm proud of me for doing, something that I'm excited about that I've done recently, like whatever it is, it just kind of helps train that ongoing monologue that we have to be a little nicer, right? To give ourselves a little good things that we're doing too, because sometimes it can get caught in negative loop there. So that's a good one that I like to do, pump myself up a little bit. Before bed, a good thing too is journaling, meditating. I have a lot of friends and colleagues that meditate to fall asleep. They have an app, they put it on, they turn their phone on do not disturb, they listen to it and they fall asleep. And that's like the only way they can now. They're so used to it. Journaling has been good. I admit it's one of those that I always am trying, but I haven't gotten fully in the routine quite yet. We're still going for it, but I've recently just told myself I don't need to fully journal. I just need to write one thing. Take the pressure of filling a page off the table, of finding time to sit down and think of all these thoughts, to instead writing, one or two things that I was grateful for that day. It could be as silly as I woke up and my coffee was awesome. It could be as big as, oh my gosh, I had this big win at work. It can be anything. But that too has definitely had a lot of studies that as you're noticing and recognizing the things you're grateful for, you see more of that throughout your day. You're focused on the positive and finding that in all situations versus the negative. Really helping just train your mindset, again, similar to the affirmations. So those are some things that I kind of have heard from other people and have tried myself too, that you can kind of use in these moments that you might not be as actively and intentionally thinking. Talking through those, any thoughts on those or anything that I didn't mention that you feel like could be something really good to try? Because I'm always willing to try.
I struggle with the journaling too. At the beginning of the year, I was like, I got a journal. I was like, I'm gonna write in it every day. And then I just didn't, so I like your idea of just like one or two sentences or something. I think that sounds less daunting than like having to write a whole page or a whole official journal entry. So yeah, it's by my bed. I keep wanting to do it. I just haven't taken the plunge yet, but.
I know I am the same way. I do a to-do list every morning to get my head right. I put everything on a to-do list and I put my journal on top of it because I know I am in the habit of making that to-do list. I have to actively tell myself, nope, I'm not journaling, right? I have to make that conscious decision to say no to get to my list. So that's helped too, like almost putting it as a barrier in front of what I know I'm going to do. So I like by the bed too, that's a good reminder. It's right there. But yeah, I actually heard that in a podcast. A man who journals all the time now, he's like, I could write like 5 pages now, but he said he started just one sentence, then built to 3 and just kind of gave himself really small goals. So then you accomplish them, you get more in a habit of doing it. And then eventually he said it just took off. And he's like, somebody could read my journal and know exactly what happened in my life day to day. So maybe we'll get there, Laura. Yes, but in here, again, I said you'd probably hear it from me again, but what's real is written. So biggest thing when we are making goals personally, professionally, it's helpful to put it out there. It's helpful to envision what that future self looks like. So that future scorecard is helpful. Or you can just as simply write out a list, right? What is this person I want to live into? What is this version of me that I want to get to? And what's keeping me from being that person, right? What am I not doing that I need to do to get to where I want to go? So writing it down, you can put it in a journal, you can do the scorecard, whatever makes sense for you. Put it in notes in your phone if that's easiest. But write it down, check in with yourself. Every 3 to 6 months is a good threshold. Typically that's when things are changing, right? You have life changes or it's a different season. Maybe you're in school now, you won't be in a couple months, right? Priorities change and things happen there. So check in with yourself every couple of months, seeing what's going on and write down tangible goals. I think that's easier too. Instead of saying, hey, 2021, I'm going to work out more. Well, broad, right? I can easily make an excuse to myself to be like, well, I did work out more than last year. It might have been one more time and then I stopped, right? But making tangible goals. I'm going to work out 3 times a week. You can track that, right? You can hold yourself accountable to that. Your accountability buddy can hold you accountable to that. Having an accountability buddy, I would say, is a huge, huge piece of those goal setting too. For me, I find that I am more likely to come through and show up for someone else than I am for me, right? It's easy to make excuses like, well, I'm busy. I'll get to my stuff later. I really owed this person so-and-so, or I told this person I would do this. So that comes first. So bring them into your stuff, right? Have them hold you accountable. you'll be like, oh goodness, I know, you know, so-and-so over here is going to call me at the end of the day and say, okay, did you journal this morning? And then I have to be like, well, no, you know, I just chose not to, right? So then you feel a little bit more of that guilt or pressure. I don't know if that's what you want to feel, but it makes you do it more, right? So you don't. But those would be my suggestions, right? Just start focusing in on what you want to do, create a game plan of how you're going to do it, and start. You know, I think we're always quick to, or again, I'll speak for myself, we're quick to say, okay, next month, next year, next Monday. But the best thing is to just do it and start. The next day is the best day, or that day is the best day. Tell somebody close to you, get them bought in, and start getting after those goals. And that's all I got. Then we're going to start living our best life. So questions, thoughts?